might say it's normal, like we all talk about MVPs for a while already. So concept of MVP has been popularized by Eric Rice, who defined it as a new version of a product which allows a team to collect the maximum amount of validated learnings about customers with the least effort. So I think today what I do see in a lot of companies is that the MVP is seen as a kind of a feature set, and we negotiate if we want 30 out of the 40 features to be out and to be considered as an MVP. And something that I see missing quite a lot of times is the concept of learnings, and especially validated learnings. So that's why today I would like to raise the question of what if an MVP doesn't have to be a product at all? What if we can run different types of learning experiments in order to actually have this maximum amount of validated learnings? So I work today as head of product, and I manage a team of 15 product managers and designers, and on around 10 different initiatives. And we always have tons of ideas. So product managers will always think about the value that they want to bring for business, about the technical feasibility. The product designers, we want to always advocate for the user needs, and we will always have tons of ideas. But the question is, how do we choose? How do we choose which idea we will go with from all this multitude of things? I'm sure you all have this all the time with your teams as well. So actually what we do is that we test these ideas in order to choose the ones that we want to implement. And I'm also sure that most of you are testing already or have tried to test or run experiments with users. And most of the times I try to advocate for this in the past, I would get an answer like, no, there's no time for this. We really need to deliver super fast, no time for experimenting, for testing, just go for it, implement it. Like we know what we need anyways. So why do this? I'm also sure that maybe it's hard if we're not on like in front face to face, but I'm sure some hands would rise here to say, yeah, we've heard this a few times before. But actually the value of learning is really, really huge. And that's why usually at all time when I work with product teams, we look at minimizing the risk to build the wrong thing. When we say innovating fast, like we will not innovate fast only if we build product fast. We will innovate fast if we learn fast. And we will always look into what are our assumptions and how we can test these, because building the wrong thing will only make us lose time, money, and eventually client satisfaction as well. So there are two different things that we that we can test or dig into. First one is an idea. Like for example, in one of my previous companies, we had this idea of the fact that if we have a referral program, this will make us gain new customers and more revenues. It was an idea and needed to be tested. We can do the same when we simply want to explore a topic. Let's say we have an idea for a new feature, and also we are focusing on a problem area. We assume that our users have a certain problem, but we want to know more about their day-to-day activities and their day-to-day needs. Or we can explore a topic around, let's say we want to know better how our customers see the pricing today, the pricing that we have, how do they perceive it? Is that, do we have a competitive advantage there, and how do we want to position ourselves? So there's a multitude of things that we can either explore or test as ideas. And in order to do that, we use lean experiments. So there are two parts in the lean experiment. The first one is what you call lean. So really, how can we achieve learning and also learn as much as we can with a minimum cost and time? And the second part is the experiment. we need to really generate proof that is tangible and especially actionable afterwards. And in the rest of the presentation, I will also share different frameworks of how to do this. So where do we start? A lot of times as we have a lot of ideas and we start prioritizing these, we will be starting with the riskiest assumptions. The riskiest assumptions are the assumptions that we don't want to leave for the end, because these are the ones that can kill our business or that are really, really tricky ones. So these are the ones that we want to tackle first. So most of the times before going forward, we will have a prioritization by riskiest assumption. And riskiest is most of the times also the one that is least probable. Like, let's say we are looking into a new homepage of our dashboard. If we have an assumption around wording and an assumption around having, let's say, a dashboard that adapts to the user's usage, and so definitely the riskiest assumption here will be the dashboard that adapts. Like, the wording part, it's most of the times a bit of common sense, even if in some industries it can make a difference. So important to have this conversation about what's the riskiest assumptions. So what I'm going to present for the rest of this talk is what are the steps and framework that I use in order to run lean experiments. So it's a workshop that I usually run with the product team, and that helps us go through the steps of running these lean experiments. And afterwards, I have quite a few examples of lean experiments that I've done in the past that I'm sure will show a bit like out of the box ways of testing our product assumptions. So let's go with the steps in order to run lean experiments. First of all, an important thing to acknowledge is that most of the times when we have an idea for a solution, this is just an assumption. We think this will work for the user, but at this stage, it is just an hypothesis. So it's important, once you acknowledge this, that you really sit down with your team and you write down this hypothesis. So let's take an example. Let's say that we are on in a tool where the clients can't really find the information they're looking for fast enough. So here our assumption could be, by showing a chatbot on every page, the clients will find the information they look for faster. So this is the assumption of the problem. So once we have written down our hypotheses, what do we do? Well, we define the experiment. And I will get back to the answer to the example. Let's say again, if I come back to the chatbot example, a test could be, we are going to create a low fidelity prototype and ask 5 users what they would do in order to contact our company. So here, as you see, we think of what we want to create in order to test it, but also how are we going to test this? So in this case, we would have a short scenario and we will show this to 5 users. It's important that we are specific of the way that we want to test our assumption. So once we have defined our hypothesis and our test, we can say, okay, we're good to go. Let's go and let's run this test. But not so fast. What's really important to do as a third step before running the lean experiment is to clearly define what validates or invalidates our hypothesis. If we don't do this beforehand, our whole testing will be biased. And in order to define this, I really recommend to use numbers and things as objective as you can. Let's say, and let me get back to the example and you see what I mean. So if we go back to the chatbot and low fidelity prototype, how do we know? We will ask ourselves, how do we know this hypothesis is true? And here is, we know if 4 out of 5 users click on chat and all users observe the chat on the first site. If we don't define this validation criteria beforehand, at the end of the test, we can also say, oh yeah, but half of them actually clicked, 2 or 3 clicked, maybe this is good, let's actually validate. If you do this beforehand, then you will need to stick to this objective validation criteria that you have defined beforehand. And there's an important thing to note here is also that this validation criteria can have both more, as I was saying, measurable part, like for out of the 5 users click on it, but also more of a behavior part as well. For example, here, as you see, I added all users observe the chat on the first site, because let's say that, yes, four users click on it, but after rolling up and down on the page for seconds. Like, we also need to take into account that they're in a test and they really want to do that action. They're in front of us, we're looking at us. But in a real case scenario, maybe the users won't be really chasing something on the page. So the fact that they do observe it very fast is also an interesting criteria to take into account in this case. So now that we have our hypotheses, our tests, and our validation criteria, now we can really go and run this test. I also want to share the way I usually do this with the team. As I was saying, it's a collaborative exercise. So I will have in the room the product designer, the product manager, ideally a developer as well, at least, or the engineering manager, and we will all we will align on our hypothesis, the thing that you see here on the paper up there. And then we would brainstorm either by ourselves or in pairs what the best test and validation criteria would be. And once we have, each of us has brainstormed, we'll just present it here, discuss it, and vote. So in this case, it's really a collaborative exercise where everyone will drive and we'll try to push the test, like how can we test this, what are different ways of testing it, how can we validate it, and so. So once we have it, we run the experiment, and the very last part after running it, which is very important, of course, is you analyze the results and we take a decision. As we have, the whole point is to learn fast and to take informed decisions for our product, right? So the fact that we have this defined the success criteria, acceptance criteria beforehand will make actually the analysis most of the times pretty straightforward, and the decision as well. Another important thing to take into account is that experiments don't fail, hypotheses are proven wrong. Even though the lean mantra of fail fast is something that we hear a lot, I still see a lot of product teams that are afraid of failing, as if when we invalidate an hypothesis, we would fail. I've seen this lots of times, even with one of the teams, one of my teams, they have run an experiment not long ago, and when they presented the results, when we had this presentation, they shared the results with me. I saw that actually in the way they analyzed it, it was a bit of hesitation of saying it wasn't clear or this was invalidated. They were mostly showing the things that we have validated. And what's important to note is that both what we validate and what we invalidate is important, because we definitely want to know what doesn't work for our clients, so that we spare ourselves the time and the money that we would spend in building something that will not work for our users. So the only way that we can fail is by not learning. So make sure that you will be winning either if you validate or invalidate your hypothesis. That's why a lot of times I try to be conscious of when I talk about this, and not only say like we do this in order to validate hypotheses. It's like to validate or to invalidate, and both of these outcomes will bring us value. So now that I've went through the framework that I use in order to define this lean experiments, I'd like to share ideas and actually a lean toolbox on how to run these experiments and what could a lean experiment be. Again, in order to drive this fast innovation and have these different shades of MVP, it's really important to be able to really think out of the box and think in terms of different lean experiments. So in the example I gave, we talk about low fidelity prototyping. And most of the times when I say lean experiments, most of the times people think of prototypes. Prototypes are a really good way of testing assumptions, as they are pretty fast to implement and there are a lot of insights that we can get from. And a lot of times they're a great way of testing, but a lot of times they're not the best way of testing it. So that's why today I want to talk about other ways of running lean experiments, others than creating low fidelity prototypes. So first of all, A/B testing. I think it's pretty much of a big topic right now. We start talking quite a lot about A/B testing. This way of testing is really good when we need to test on a larger scale, so with multiple clients and also in real life conditions. Another really interesting thing with A/B testing is that the granularity can be pretty flexible, so you can test really very different versions or tiny different versions. In some cases, depending on the industry, a comma or a different word can make a huge difference in conversion or adoption or whatever you're reaching for with your clients. I've seen this used very interestingly in other cases as well. Like, for example, a company was trying to test their very first demo version. So when the free trial, like how long the free trial of their SaaS product should be, and they were hesitating between 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and 6 weeks. And actually, they did an A/B/C test on this part, and after a pretty short period of time, they were able to define which timing period was the best for them. So here's an example of the way I used it in a project of an online help center. Just for the context, we were redesigning an online help center for a telco company. And the question was, what's the best way to navigate to our new help center? Basically, we wanted to know what the entry point for the help center. And what we did is actually was an A/B/C test. We had 3 ideas of different entry points, and like it was a search bar, a drop down in the navigation, and a floating widget. And we actually A/B/C tested this for a couple of days on our website. And in the end, we implemented a drop down menu, which had the best results with our users. Another way of running lean experiments is smoke tests. So basically, smoke tests are a fake entry point into your product or your website that will help you get a lot of insights. Again, the good point in this is that you will be able to do this pretty much at scale, and the effort is really minimal. In some cases, we can just put a fake button. In some cases, it can be more. It's mostly up to you how you want to use this. Here's an example of how we use this with Pivotal Tracker. Actually, Pivotal Tracker is a tool for product management, for managing a backlog, a bit like a Jira as well. So the team was thinking about developing a new feature, and in order to align multiple teams, as a lot of times we have different dependencies between teams' backlogs, they were thinking of developing a new feature. But the question was, will users find this feature valuable? So the test we did is that we displayed a false blog post. So basically what you see here, new solution for team alignment beta, where we were just showing this and asking the users to subscribe to a beta version of this feature. When they clicked on this blog post, this redirected to a subscription form. And the way we analyzed the result is that we said if the conversion rate is minimum of 10%, it means that this is an interesting need for our users. So not only we have validated this by having a conversion rate that was more than 10%, but also the fact that the context were filled in the form. This already gave us a database with clients that we could contact for future research phases, where when this feature would already start being more like a solution that is defined. So really a big win here. And you can see that the effort was really minimal, because it was just writing these 3 lines of text in our tool, in our product, and counting how many people joined. Concierge MVP. So concierge MVP consists of having a person manually doing an action, and the users will know it. This will give us a lot of insights about the way our users would use a certain feature that is pretty complex, and we don't need to put much effort into it, especially a development effort. Of course, this will not be scalable, but as soon as we have our learnings, if we do validate a certain amount of learnings, we will be able to start building the feature itself afterwards. So an example here is a food delivery service. The context is that we're working for a major supermarket brand in the UK, and they wanted to develop a high-end delivery service. And the main question here was, is it possible to deliver in less than 60 minutes? So what we did here is that the order was made by a client that just wrote in a Google Keep list their grocery list. And a member of our team, using a GoPro, actually went to the supermarket, picked up the things, and prepared the delivery and delivered it to our client. So this helped us not only validate the logistical feasibility of the service, the fact that we were able to pick up everything and to deliver it in less than 60 minutes, which was our question, but it also made us uncover a lot of different pain points and use cases during the order preparation and delivery. Like, for example, we realized that if the clients will want to buy heavy items, like big packs of water, or more like big or heavy packs, we were delivering very fast by bike, so this will not be possible to be done in the same conditions. So a lot of interesting logistics as well, logistics and use cases here as well. And again, it only took us the 60 minutes to run the experiment. Another interesting one that is pretty much in the same mindset is for an energy company. So basically, here it was a new startup, and they were thinking about their value proposition. They had three ideas, and the question here was, which value proposition will resonate most with our target? So what they did is that they created 3 different landing pages, one for each value proposition, and they launched 3 Google AdWords campaigns. And the landing pages also provided a way for potential customers to sign up for the service. And as the result, they picked the value proposition that had a significantly higher conversion rate. So as you see, it's really interesting, because we can test with this kind of ideas and methods different things. Like here, we are not talking about a software solution. Here, we are talking about a value proposition. In the example just before, I was talking about the logistics and validation, that we can do it in less than 60 minutes. In other cases, it was really, as I was talking about Pivotal Tracker, about, is this feature valuable for our users? So depending on what's your assumption, there are very different ways that are like better ways of testing your hypothesis. So now let's talk about Wizard of Oz. Wizard of Oz is pretty similar as Concierge MVP. The difference is that in the case of Wizard of Oz, the clients or the users will not know that the person is doing the action. In this case, an example would be fake bots, where we have a person behind the bot, but the end user doesn't know that a person is actually doing this manually. Again, this is low effort and a lot of learnings in real time and real conditions. The user will just act as they normally act without knowing what's behind the fake boat, for example, bot in this example. And a pretty famous example for this is Zappos. So Zappos is online website in the US that's starting quite a long time ago, at the time where online shopping wasn't that obvious. And actually the creator had an assumption, which was, are people willing to buy shoes online? At the time, it was something that it was really uncommon. We didn't do this yet. And in order to test if people would be willing to buy shoes online, what he did is that he went to the nearest shoe shop. He took pictures of all of different products and he put them online in a basic HTML page. And anytime anyone would buy the shoes, he would go back to this store, buy the shoes, and deliver the shoes himself. So this is very interesting because it not only this validated his assumption of, yes, people are willing to buy shoes online, but also made him learn enormously about the preferences in terms of shoes, about how logistics work related to the delivery, and a lot of other key aspects in building the business that he now has. Another example of Wizards of Oz is AdWork, which is a social search engine similar to Quora. And their main questions were at the very beginning as well, like how do people use our product, and what features should we prioritize? So what they did here is that during 9 months, interns manually reviewed, categorized, and moderated discussion threads. And this is what the platform would do once it's automated. It's just that they didn't decide to automate it right away. They decided to learn by really reviewing and categorizing all these discussion threads. And in this case, like, they really learned that users engaged in multiple discussions in the same time. They were most likely to come back and use the app for the long term. So they were able to prioritize to improve this. And during this process, they also raised $30 million. Another way that's pretty fast for you to test ideas of feature is to do competitor testing. If your competitor already has a feature that you have in mind of building, you can use your competitor's product or website in order to test this feature and to test how the users would behave and what the users' needs are. When you do competitor testing, another interesting insight is also the fact that you will be able to get new insights on how the users perceive your brand, and how the users perceive your competitor's brand as well. So it's a pretty smart one. This can be done, I was talking about, again, about more like software products, but this can be done with other types of products as well. So quite a long time ago, I was working for car rental company, and I was working on the more like the strategy, repositioning of this company and rebuilding the value proposition and the services. And their main clients were business people that were arriving at the airport. And our main question was, what are the needs and the behaviors of the clients arriving at the airport? So what we did is that we went to the airport and we shadowed competitor rent-a-cars booths at the airport. We spent a few hours there. We didn't have the money at the time to buy a booth there yet, and we didn't know if we wanted to invest in that because we really wanted to learn more about the behaviors first. So just the fact of us being there and shadowing how our potential users behaved made us learn a lot about the behaviors of the clients that had a reservation versus the ones that didn't have a reservation, or the questions that they would ask, and also the services that they were looking for. And it only costed us 4 or 5 hours at the airport. And I left the funny named one for more for the end. So picnic in the graveyard. It's actually a way for us to test ideas and business ideas from people that have done this and failed before. So if you have an idea for a new business and you can look up other entrepreneurs or other people that have tried this before. And the idea for Picnic in the Graveyard is to contact these people and to try to learn from what they did before. This is, you'll be amazed, like most of the people are super open to actually talk about their learnings and share their experiences. And this is it's a great way to understand more about your market as well, about the competitors, about different strategies. It will help you refine your strategies, your go-to-market part, your product part. So it's a really interesting conversation to have. So all these examples that are very different from only using prototypes, I think the main idea here for me is that it's really important to get out of the box, to be creative. This is a mindset that you can create with your team and within your team, and that you can grow in your company in order to lead this fast innovation and in order to be able to learn. And I still have two pretty much out of the box examples as well. One of the examples is it's called Mechanical Turks. So for an company that was starting to do educational videos for piano players, and their main question was, again, they were pretty early stage and they were asking themselves, what is a good educational video for piano? They had no infos, no insights, no product at the time. So what they did is that they leveraged existing YouTube videos. They hired Mechanical Turks, which is a service of people that will do certain actions manually for a pretty low cost. And they would be watching each video and answer the question, what is it, what category, and what characteristics? So by analyzing these correlations between the video popularity, category, and characteristics, they learned a lot about what a good video would make. And this was done without generating any data, without creating any videos, without investing in anything before actually getting this knowledge. Another idea, bit more like out of the box, is the kit page. So I was working for a telco company, and we were rebuilding the homepage of my account. And we had a lot of questions around what information is most important for the users to see, and what's the hierarchy of this information should be on this homepage. So basically, it was a pretty broad question of what do our users need to see in the dashboard. So we could have created a prototype with some assumptions and tested and iterate from there. But what we decided to do was a kit page. As you see here in the photo, we had this bits of paper that you can stick or take out of the blank page, and our users were able to actually kick a part of this page, like emergency or ask questions or did bills or whatever we had there. They could add new ones, as you can see here on the yellow post-it, or they could simply move things on the page depending on the importance that they saw for these items. So this was super insightful, because after testing this with 5 users, we already had a good understanding of what information was more important and also how to organize the information architecture. We also revealed some new information that we wanted to add. And I think this is a great example, because if we would have went for prototyping, we would have learned, but we would have needed like 3 or 4 rounds of research to get to the same amount of knowledge. Like we couldn't have just made up the things that the users added. We would have like retested in a new test and so on. And this really made us get a maximum amount of learning with not much effort, actually, because it only took us half an hour to create this page. So as a conclusion, It's really important when thinking about running lean experiments to define your hypotheses, and also to always think of how do we want to minimize risk early and often as well. Don't forget to follow these 5 steps of writing down your hypothesis, defining the experiment, thinking how are you going to validate it or invalidate it, and after running it, really measure the results in order to take an informed decision. And last but not least, think out of the box. As I was saying, this is a mindset to cultivate in your team. And make sure that you also take the time to choose the right experiment for a product at the precise moment in time. Let's say that you've done an A/B test, you've used to do A/B tests before for your product. Doesn't mean that this is still the best way of testing. Your hypothesis might be different, your market might be different, your users might be different, your assumptions might be different. Really think of at each moment in time of what are your hypotheses and what's the best way of testing them. And now I will leave you with one question. So if you think of the product ideas and assumptions that you have with your team right now, what are these assumptions and how are you going to test them? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. Great presentation and amazing the basic methods. I definitely learned a couple of new of them, especially like I didn't know that the Wizard of Oz actually had this name. I definitely know that for sure that Zalando, one of the biggest e-commerce in the apparel space here in Germany, they started exactly like this, like by like taking the pictures, posting on the internet, and then actually like faking the whole process of like owning the stock in the warehouse. They were also going and buying the shoes and apparel like from the shops. So
yeah,
that was like,
Airbnb is another one that started exactly like that. They took pictures of their own apartment and put it online.
exactly. So I would kindly ask you to go to the chat and like click on the link that I have shared with you or with everybody actually within the Slido.
Chat. Maybe I should stop sharing.
Yeah.
Oh, let me see. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
chat.